And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren, along with you on this Wednesday morning. We're going to talk about the 5-game early slate on Wednesday. DraftKings FanDuel. Check out what other sites have as well. Don't forget, plenty of content for the later slate over there on Awesemo.com. Need to be a member. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD, 50% off your first month. Also, still extended. You can check out more information over on Awesemo.com. $50 off the MLB only package. So if you want to just log in and get Major League Baseball information, you can do that as well by checking out that promo code. You can also hit up EMAC DFS. He's been pushing for it. So if you want to ask him questions, feel free. Love you, EMAC. Hope you're listening. So, Dave, how you doing?
Doing well, man. I got to witness Russell Westbrook post 20 points, 20 rebounds, and 21 assists last night. I mean, it was incredible. I was flipping around to baseball, to basketball, and then this game, it was nationally televised too. So anyone could have seen it. And I get to I'm checking the box scores to see it's midway through the third quarter. Cause I had said on the NBA strategy shows, like Bryce Harper will probably triple double midway through the third. And he did it with 4.5 minutes left in the third, close enough. Anyway, he went into the fourth quarter. He needed 4.6 rebounds and 2 assists for 20, 20, and 20. He got it with about 30 seconds left, and it's the first time anyone's done it since Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt only did it once, and yes, it was with assists. They did not record blocks until after he retired, and it's the second time it's ever been done. So, I mean, just an incredible, incredible feat from Russell Westbrook. And you know what? Talk about stat padding all you want. I don't care. I don't care how much you want to pad stats. The fact that it hasn't been done since Wilt is just outrageous. And then Bryce Harper hit a second deck home run at Nationals Park. So that capped off the night pretty well. But the Westbrook thing was just, to me, one of the coolest things I've witnessed in a long time.
And narratives abound with Westbrook. You can see video of him pounding his chest after the 2020 was eclipsed and saying that's for Nipsey. And for those of you who don't follow pop culture, Nipsey Hussle shot and killed out there in LA. A lot of NBA players were close with him. So don't know if that was also part of his focus of just sort of going over the top in honor of.
What was Nipsey Hussle's deal? I mean, I've been following, like, not really following, but the headlines showing, that like they have an all out search for, they had the woman that was driving the car didn't even know his name is Eric Holder, by the way, which if you're familiar with that name. Yes.
Oh my God.
You're familiar with Eric Holder. The same Eric Holder, actually. It was.
I shouldn't be laughing, but there's a lot of. Anyway, that's bad. But he was a hip hop producer and artist.
By the way, it wasn't the son of
of
former
course
Attorney General under Barack Obama.
And he was doing a lot in the community. He had a couple of STEM programs that he propped up. He had an entrepreneur program that he was trying to get inner city kids hooked up with Silicon Valley companies. And so he was seen as somebody who was trying to do right by his community and wasn't leaving, and was trying to build back up the area he grew up in to be what he thought it should be. And I don't know why he was targeted. There were 4 other people in the area. Whether or not it was him that was expressly supposed to be shot, don't know. I haven't read enough on that, but apparently a very well-known and well-liked person had been a big part of the NBA. I know LeBron James and James Harden have hung out with him a bunch, and I guess Westbrook did as well. So take that narrative.
Wasn't there speculation that it was gang-related?
I think that is the immediate reaction. So that is what was said by not the prosecutor, the chief of police out there. But I haven't seen what's been discussed since then. But
all right.
Westbrook, crazy night. If you haven't seen, I was going to say this before we got into Nipsey Hussle. If you haven't seen Bryce Harper's bat flip after that home run against the Nationals, it's not on the Bautista level when the playoff bat flip, but it has some certain gusto.
It's a quad flip. I mean, It's a quad flip. That bat flips 4 times in the air.
MLB Network shared out a fan video of it, so you'll want to check that out as well. So we have 5 games on this early slate to get through. Some of our more talented Major League Baseball pitchers are on this short slate. We do have a night slate as well, but we'll go through this one quickly here. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, Dave has your deep dive, typically right up focusing on the night slate, and then you have split slates like this where content will be out. You'll get projections, you'll get grades, you'll get all of those things if you're a member. Shows include the MLB strategy show, and as NBA continues to linger here, NBA shows will be up over on the YouTube channel as well, so you'll want to stay tuned for those. We have Kluber, Nola, Marquez, who just signed a extension with the Colorado Rockies. Charlie Herman indeed.
I wasn't correcting you. It's just fun to say.
Yep. And then you have Morton, Castillo, and Peralta, Carlos Rodon, Kyle Gibson, might as well name them all, Aaron Sanchez, and Homer Bailey is your bare minimum over there on DK against the Minnesota Twins. Top end, Kluber against the White Sox, Nola against these Nationals who struggled on Tuesday night a bit against Zach Eflin. You have Marquez against Tampa Bay, and then Morton on the other side against Colorado, who has struggled on the road, as we've talked about many times over. What do you like at the top end in this 5-game slate?
All right. Well, it's not too bad at the top now, is it? A few guys that I like a lot. I mean, yesterday was kind of strange, but you had a ton of great options, and the Snellevator went to the top floor, baby. What a stud.
He's pretty good at baseball.
Yeah, I like him. Absolutely. But you have a lot here, and a few guys that I like a lot. As you mentioned, we'll cover the early slate because we're going to have plenty of content for all of these slates. White Sox active roster, 25.2% K rate versus righties in 2018, Dan. That would be tied for the highest in Major League Baseball. And they're going to continue to strike out quite a bit, would be my guess. Corey Kluber at the top. I actually think Kluber has the best Cy Young odds in the AL, by the way.
Interesting,
right? I thought Bauer would have been a nice dark horse pick there. Same team, excellent stuff, definitely possible. But I don't know, man. Kluber at 10.9, like that to me is still a very favorable price point. I have no issues with that at all. As far as Aaron Nola goes, look, Aaron Nola is very good. Third best Cy Young odds in the East, behind, as you would guess, Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom.
Right.
But the thing here is, as much as I like him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a strong performance here. Zach Eflin, who has been very good against righties, struggles against lefties, facing only 3 lefties yesterday, went out and threw a dominant performance. Probably would have kept going had they not pinch hit for him with runners on the corners. And Nola can probably have a very strong performance here again, but I'm looking below that at Herman Marquez. So I have Kluber up at the top, and then you have Nola sandwiched in between them, which makes it tougher because I think Marquez is in a better spot. Now, look, this Tampa Bay lineup, they also 25.2% K rate on the active roster from last season. I mean, you're going to get strikeouts here as well. So I think both of these spots for Kluber and for Marquez are really interesting. And, while the Tampa Bay Rays will put up runs at times, they do have a few guys that can get hits. You still have guys like Adames and Zunino who are going to strike out at a very high clip, and a few other guys that hover around that 25% rate too. So, I mean, at the top, it's hard to get away from them, Dan. And I will throw one more in here in the, I won't say higher tier, but upper mid-range. Charlie Morton was phenomenal with Houston. We saw him, much like Gerrit Cole, but first come from Pittsburgh to Houston and, stop throwing the two-seamer as much, more of the secondary off-speed stuff, and it made a huge difference. Well, he's coming off one of the best seasons of his career, and he still has a great park, a better park to pitch in at the Trop.
Right.
He's facing a Rockies team that, as we know, outside of Coors has really struggled. I don't know about you, and we'll get to the guys beneath them, because there's one guy, who I really think has a ton of potential. He just needs to throw the right pitches and less two-seamer. He's down around 6,300 maybe. But I don't know about you, but Kluber, Marquez, and Morton, you could make a great case for all of them. And Nola's so good that I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish as the top pitcher on the slate. It's just hard when you have Kluber, Marquez, and Morton there.
Yeah, I think that we have a stacked top end here, and it probably would come down to exactly what offense you're trying to go to, and we'll come to that as we discuss the bottom end of the pitcher pool here. I know you're leaning towards talking about Kyle Gibson here. This Cleveland Indians lineup, though, against Carlos Rodon isn't exactly great right now. They lost Brantley to Houston. You have Francisco Lindor on the shelf. This is a bunch of retreads to an extent, and guys who just aren't great at hitting the baseball.
Don't forget about Encarnacion.
Well, right. He's off in, was he in Seattle now? Is that where he is?
Yeah.
I think that this is a team that is going to struggle, and pieces are there on this rotation. You mentioned Kluber, obviously, from a DFS perspective. You mentioned Bauer from a Cy Young perspective. Carrasco. There's pitchers here, but there's been talk of them trying to trade them. I really think Cleveland's in this weird in-between of trying to rebuild for the future and compete this year. And if Lindor's out for an extended period of time, this offense really going to struggle. And Rodon's somebody that has the sort of K upside as a lefty against a team like the Indians. And at 7K, I think between him and Gibson, we do have some low-end options, too, that have some high K upside potential on this slate. It's going to be fun to pair some of these pitchers. It's going to be a fun 5-game slate, I think, to try to figure out exactly how roster construction comes together.
I agree. And let's not forget, Cleveland lost another bat that was integral to their success. Do you know who it is?
Is Yan Gomes no longer there? I don't know.
Well, I didn't even think about Yan Gomes, but yes, he is one. Another one, though. A lefty with a 200-plus ISO against righties.
So who's instrumental? So Brantley gone.
5 gone. Gomes gone.
Gomes gone. Lindor on the shelf.
Yandy
and
Díaz gone.
I'm missing who?
Yonder Alonso.
Yeah. In 2018, he did a good job for them.
Yeah. I mean, he was with them last year, I'm saying.
Yeah, 2018.
I thought you were saying he was gone.
Last year. No.
Yeah. He came over, I think, in 17, like midway through the year. But and look, this is another guy that had 23 home runs, 83 RBIs, hit righties really well. You're right. You're absolutely right. This team has lost a lot. I mean, adding Leonis Martin is not exactly moving the needle, right? You have Jake Bowers, whatever. You got Carlos Santana back, but Santana had a pretty dismal season in Philly, right? They do have Hanram. So
to a point where they brought in multiple other players to play first base.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to discredit them entirely because Hanley Ramírez, it's not like he can't still hit, but he's nowhere near who he used to be. You know, Bad Miller, we know Roberto Perez, like Tyler Naquin. No, you're right. This is a team that with Lindor out specifically, because when he comes back, I know it's only one guy, but it definitely makes a difference. The Indians go from a team that you would really never play anybody against. And now I think you can. Now, Rodon definitely is one of these pitchers who the walks concern me.
Yep.
And even if you look at this active roster for the Indians, they have the highest walk rate on their active roster against righties, 12.2. The next team was at 11%. Phillies were at 10%. So stark difference there. That is the one concern I have. If Rodon if he has his command, you could see a very, very solid start. If not, my concern is that they just wait him out and basically load the bases on, 5-pitch walks, which is a concern. And look, when it comes to Kyle Gibson, there's also a concern. If you want to talk about Kyle Gibson's stuff, right, like just his stuff, he has good stuff. He's a guy that in seasonal drafts, I was willing to draft super late, because nobody wanted anything to do with him. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'll take the chance on a guy who, look, I'm not going to act like I'm a pitching coach, Dan, but we know that he's got some really good pitches, okay?
Yep.
Like the curveball, slider, and changeup last year, He threw the slider 21% of the time, the curve 10, the changeup 11. So not a ton. Should have been more. His whiff rates on these pitches, or whiffs per swing, the slider 51%. He threw it 21% of the time. The curveball 46%, and the changeup 36%. Those are wild swing and miss numbers on those pitches. Yet for some reason he relied heavily on, he threw the two seam with 34%. Well, I'm not saying it's not a good pitch. You're trying to get ground ball double plays. You're trying to get ground out. There are always opportune times. The two seam or the sinker can be a really, really, really useful pitch. But when you've got strikeout stuff like that, I just think if you used it more, you could have, you could look what happened to Gerrit Cole and Charlie Morton when they stopped throwing them as much and just used them sparingly when they needed to, maybe with runners on base. It's crazy.
It's one also point to those two pitchers specifically of spin rate and understanding better exactly how to approach with what Houston did. I will say this. I really do like Gibson here against Kansas City, but the more you dive into, and listen, I can ring the alarm bell here. Yes, it's a small sample size, but the Indians have been terrible this year. It's a 32% K percentage. Yes, they're a 10.9% walk percentage, and that's going to mitigate some of these issues, but their WRC plus is 40. Their slugging percentage is 230, ISO of .066. This is a team that is devoid of talent right now and devoid of upside. So I like Rodon. I like Gibson. And the guys you mentioned at the top end with Nola and Kluber on the other side against Chicago White Sox. This is going to, I mean it, this is going to be a fun one where you're going to be able to spread around your starting pitching ownership. And maybe it sounds like I'm trying to talk about everybody. Well, I am. I think you have multiple ways to go here from a pitching perspective, and it really comes down to how you feel most comfortable rostering your hitters. And I guess it turns to this now, Dave. Who are you most comfortable going against from a pitching perspective? We have Aníbal Sánchez for the Washington Nationals. We have Homer Bailey at 4K for the Kansas City, which is such a weird thing. Homer Bailey as a Kansas City Royal, but he is that. And then you have Castillo and Peralta, who we didn't talk about extensively, but they both have decent upside from a K perspective. Which pitcher are you most likely to stack against here?
That's the thing, dude. Peralta and Castillo have ridiculous upside from a strikeout perspective, right? I mean, no joke. The thing with Freddy Peralta and the concern I had coming into this season is, are hitters going to pick up on him? Because, I mean, I feel like Freddy Peralta would be, and I'm taking nothing away from him, but I feel like he'd be an amazing closer because really he's a two-pitch pitcher. And he's somebody that is going to heavily use the four-seam fastball, and then he's going to throw the curveball like less than – I mean, seriously, last season it was 78% fastball, 19% curveball. It's crazy. And then like 3% changeup. How long do you get away with that? He hides his pitches really well, particularly against righties. He makes it harder to see the ball coming out of his hand, which makes the four-seamer a lot harder to hit. His perceived velocity is also a lot higher on his fastball. So all those things are great, but I don't know. What do you think? How long can he get away with it? Because if you look at the one side, you say, all right, well, this dude in his rookie season had ridiculous strikeout upside. I think he was striking righties out at 33% or something. I'm just curious to know how long that can last with these two pitches.
You read enough about any major league pitcher, and everybody wants them to have a third, right? Like that's the thing. You read over and over again that eventually major league hitters are going to figure it out. The thing is, the elite arms can get away with it longer. Is he elite? I don't know. Or these elite pitches? I haven't dove into them enough.
I don't think he's elite.
Yeah, but are these elite pitches? And I think that's sort of a different question to an extent. Does he use them correctly and the like? I'm not bullish long-term, but I think near-term from a DFS perspective, until proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that they're going to work. I'm going to see that they're working near-term. And yes, we can bet on regression. We can bet on the breakout from an offensive perspective, but I'll roster and continue seeing exactly what we get until I have the bust out. No, I'll be okay with that. I'll be okay with that one-off performance.
Yeah. When you're a reliever, it's a lot easier to
absolutely. Look at Josh Hader.
Right.
Josh Hader's throwing the same pitch over and over again.
Yep. Dude, the best closer ever.
Yep. I know him well.
What's that?
I said I know him well.
Mo. But if you go out there and like Brad Peacock's a good example of a guy who always struggles third time through the order.
Yep.
Right? Because he 2 pitches really, and they're good. They're really good. But you start to get a feel for it second or third time around. So, I mean, look, Peralta's got a lot of upside, but lefties gave him a lot of trouble last season as well. So I think the lefties here and a Cincinnati stack definitely makes sense. He's good, but there are a lot of good pitchers on this slate, and he'd be a guy that I'm okay to go against. And Castillo, I need to see him prove it. Like we need to see some sustainability here. He has good stuff. We all know that. Like Castillo, nasty fastball. I might be wrong, but I think he had the highest average fastball velocity last year. It may have been. Was it Severino? It was maybe he had the highest perceived velocity, but it was up there for sure. And we saw him. What was it? Not last season, but the year before that was awesome, right? Like really good and really great stuff. And last year kind of unraveled, but he was sitting 96 last year and 97.9 the year before. So that's just insane. And he has good stuff, but at Great American Ballpark, these are 2 spots, Dan, where I'm probably willing to get on board with. And I will say this much too. I know that Max Scherzer was on the mound. Totally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Philly's having a 2.9 implied run total. I think in any spot going forward is kind of crazy. Just the way that lineup is built. Do you know Maikel Franco, who's been batting 7th and 8th this year, was intentionally walked twice tonight at the bottom of the order. Like if the bottom of that order is hitting, it's going to be really, really tough to ever consider liking pitchers against them. And when they're not, you still have so many other guys, whether it be like, you don't hear about Segura or McCutchen talked about because you have Bryce and you have Realmuto and Hoskins, but there's a slew of really, really deadly hitters in that lineup. And again, I get it, having a 2.9 or 3 run total against Scherzer. He's the best pitcher in the game, but they're just, it's almost every out is a tough out there.
Right.
And there's a ridiculous amount of power. So when it comes to Aníbal Sánchez, I thought he was impressive last year, a nice little bounce back season. But I mean, do you really have that? Here's an example, Dan. The Phillies have a 4.0 run total tomorrow.
Yep.
To me, that just seems a little bit low,
I think that's your stack. I think that's the offense you lean on most here. And I think then you're right that Great American Ballpark comes into play as well, as that matchup does scream a little bit of offense as you talk between Peralta and Castillo. Castillo was pretty good with the walks last year, better than I thought he was, honestly, when I went to look up his numbers. But I think this is a sort of game that we're going to have to do a little bit more research on and see exactly where it all comes together. But as of right now, it is a game with an 8.5 over/under, -112 in favor of Cincinnati between Peralta and Castillo. To run through this quickly, White Sox are +1. The Cleveland is -194 money line with a 7 over/under between the White Sox and the Indians. Rockies and Rays -130 in favor of Tampa Bay. A 7 over/under. Twins Royals is -145 in favor of Minnesota. 8.5 run total. Then you get the Diamondbacks and Padres. That rounds out our early slate here. That's a -130. I'm sorry, I've already gone through them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, that is all 5 of them. The Diamondbacks, Padres is on a separate slate. So we're going to have to find offense somewhere. The one game with a over 8 total is Twins Royals with Kyle Gibson and Homer Bailey. I assume we'll see plenty of twin stacks on this slate. And then I think you're right. I think it's Phillies, and then the game at Great American Ballpark between Peralta and Castillo with an 8.5 as well. So it seems kind of redundant to go through the offense here, where we've already sort of targeted what pitchers we're going to say be saying the same things over and over again.
We'll go quick.
Let's do it quickly. Let's target as we go through which has potentially the biggest upside. As we obviously have talked about stacks, we can talk more specifically about players at each position. If we look at the catcher spot, always a fun task to try to find the diamond in the rough here. Realmuto is expensive. He's $4,800. Let's see. Grandal is against Castillo at $4,100. You have, I wonder if Willens will be in the lineup here for Minnesota. Astudillo, I think I'm close to pronouncing that correctly, would probably be in the lineup batting from the right side. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see what that lineup is for Minnesota, but he's $4,200. And then you're hunting and pecking. I guess Castro, if he's in the lineup against Bailey, will be pretty popular. Any catcher stand out to you?
Yeah, a couple of them. JT Realmuto is interesting just because Aníbal Sánchez, even in a pretty solid season, it wasn't a full season, but pretty significant reverse splits from a strikeout standpoint. Twice as many home runs per 9 to righties, 0.68 to lefties, 1.27 to righties. A lot of the numbers are fine, but his fly ball rate was way higher to righties. Ground ball rate was way lower. You pretty much look across the board, and those are some interesting numbers there. Now, granted, not a huge sample, but let's take it back to 2017, the same thing. 413 weighted on base average allowed to righties. Home runs per 9 was almost one full home run per 9 higher, 2.68. And K rate was 21%. Once again, ground ball rate actually it was a little different, which is strange because they usually normalize quicker. But I mean, if you think that Sanchez is somewhere in between last year and the year before, then you definitely like the Phillies here. And I don't know, 4.0 run total seems pretty low in a spot like this. I get it, Dan. The weather might not be great, but it's going to be 65, 67 degrees. Like that's hardly insane. Wind's going to be blowing basically from left to right field. Nothing insane there. 11 miles per hour. I definitely have interest in that. And then, Yasmani Grandal, Great American Ballpark, man, we all know that the Great American has the potential to be one of the great stack parks, the best homer parks in the league. It is really, I think, the most righty-friendly power park, but it doesn't really bother me when you're talking about lefties either. Grandal's numbers against righties last year were excellent, man, and he's still hitting them really well. Luis Castillo last season, 373 WOBA to lefties. I believe it was 240 ISO allowed to the position, and more than 2 home runs per 9. His K rate was sat at 21%. I mean, yeah, these are numbers that I will happily jump on. 42% hard contact as well. So you don't really need to dive beneath the surface to see that Grandal pops out as a pretty solid option here. So you can look elsewhere. I mean, I don't think Tucker Barnhart's crazy. We don't know if he'll be in the lineup. If he is, batting 7th against Peralta, who's also struggled against lefties. Great park for hitters. I don't mind either hitter from the Great American game between the Reds and Brewers. And I think Realmuto, again, definitely needs to be in the conversation, although that price tag is pretty lofty.
It is, and something to keep in mind as you go through. Again, Jason Castro, 3,500 here against Homer Bailey would seem to be somebody I may have in my lineup. Still expensive, though, comparatively. When you're trying to maybe get in a couple of these higher-end pitchers, a $3,500 catcher with batting 8th or 9th potentially for the Twins, not going to necessarily get it done. Homer Bailey in his career has struggled, period. You don't really have to go much further than that. Had some upside for a while there, but has given up a 341 WOBA, 439 slugging percentage over his career, 2 lefty bats. Castro has a little bit of pop, has given up home runs to both sides of the plate. So Jason Castro is somebody that in that matchup in Kansas City, I might dub as at least good enough at a cheaper price point to roster here. First base. We go back to Milwaukee and Cincinnati. You have Thames and Aguilar and the light there. You have C.J. Cron and Tyler Austin against the Homer Bailey machine. Rhys Hoskins gets Sanchez, obviously. Carlos Santana, Hanley Ramírez. Do you like Ramírez against Rodon here? Is this somewhere where you think he gets his bat in the lineup and has some upside?
Who is that? Sorry, I was trying to research. Huh?
Hanram.
He's all right. Rodon's problem isn't as much home runs. You know, that's I've never been big on picking on Carlos Rodon. And it doesn't mean that I love him for fantasy purposes all the time because of the walk issues, and the K rate is good but not spectacular. So, I mean, I don't have an issue with Hanley Ramírez. He's probably not going to stand out as a top play, but I don't think he's terrible. It's weird too because last year Rodon was like way worse against lefties. Now he only faced a third as many lefties as he did righties, but it was the same thing the year before too. He was really markedly better against righties. The strikeout department different, but suppressing power was hugely different, and weighted on base average also. So I don't know if I go there today, but I will go to a $4,000 Joey Votto. To me, batting second against Freddy Peralta, that's kind of wild. And Peralta still hasn't proven himself. And let's go to the other side of this one where he's first base eligible, Travis Shaw. I will stick in this game, and I will happily do so. I really have no problem at all targeting a lot of positions in this game. To me, it just makes sense. Marwin González seems a bit pricey here, but anytime you're going up against Homer Bailey, I think you can make a very good argument for it. I don't care if it's a Kauffman Stadium or anywhere else. It's Homer Bailey, and man, this guy, when he unravels, does he unravel? So yeah, it's not bad. And look, I'm a big fan of Ryan O'Hearn. I like Kyle Gibson, but like I said, there's still some question marks with Gibson. I don't entirely trust him. Ryan O'Hearn batting middle order, sub 4K on DraftKings makes a lot of sense to me. And the last guy I'll throw out here, Rhys Hoskins. Yes, you'll have to pay for him, but Rhys Hoskins is a monster power bat. He is now hitting behind Bryce Harper and ahead and in front of Realmuto. Those are two guys that you will happily be sandwiched in between, throughout the course of a season. And, it's not like he only hits lefties. Well, no, actually last year, 31 of his 34 home runs came against righties. He had a 288 ISO against righties, Dan. 380 WOBA, monster numbers, 140 WRC plus. Lock that in, man. 52% fly ball rate. I actually love Rhys Hoskins here against Aníbal Sánchez. And I could be wrong, but people love these implied totals.
Mm-hmm.
If that Philly total stays, I don't see it going much higher. This stays around 4. You're talking about the 5th highest total on the slate with only 10 teams. To me, Philly stack definitely in play. It's going to be expensive. You're probably going to have to go with one cheap pitcher, but given Sanchez's history against righties and knowing the power that we have in this lineup from the right side of the plate, really, really enticing.
I will point out Jason Walker, a colleague of ours at the previous stop, used to always say about Vegas totals,
good guy.
Find the ones you disagree with and exploit them. Like find the ones and he talked about it in football, but baseball too, that if you think Vegas got it wrong, which does happen, or they're just under a little bit, find those that you can exploit. Or the other side, if you think Vegas is inflated for some reason, target the pitcher, target the defense when it comes to NFL. And I think that's the at least sound thought process to incorporate into your thinking. I will point out Kyle Gibson in his career against lefties has given up 0.81 home runs per 9, where he's given up 1.20 home runs per 9 against righties, has a lower K percentage but a higher walk percentage to lefties, an xFIP of 4.64. You mentioned O'Hearn there against Gibson, which I think is reasonable. But I do agree with you. If you have all the cash in the world, you're going with 2 cheap pitchers, this Phillies team, I think, is in for a big day again against Aníbal Sánchez. But you do also have Joey Votto at 4K, which I know
he's the first guy I mentioned.
Yeah, they're going back to it. Like he's old, but you're gonna get points from him, and that's the thing about Votto for me.
5 plate appearances.
Yeah, like you're gonna get points from him. You're gonna get a couple of walks. You're gonna get a single or a double. Like you're gonna get 5. it feels like he's a floor player. He's a cash game option here to really make things work. So turning the page to second
By
base.
The way, I agree with you on Gibson in terms of the reverse splits last year. The only reason I would throw Hearn out there, not only the price point, but I get that it was a limited sample, only 129 plate appearances against righties last year. 458 WOBA, 393 ISO, 194 WRC plus. Wicked numbers. 48% fly ball rate and hard contact rate. And he sprayed the ball all over the field. So look, neither of us expect him to sustain those type of numbers, but he showed a ton with the platoon advantage. So at that price, knowing that he has that type of power, he had 22 extra base hits on 129 plate appearances, 112 at bats. So basically 1 out of every 5 at bats. Pretty incredible.
For those playing DFS on Tuesday night, Madison Bumgarner, and you're not listening to this Tuesday night, but Madison Bumgarner gave up 5 unearned runs, but also hit a home run himself. So
he's such a good hitter. It's crazy.
Trying to get it back. Let's touch next on second base. You have Whit Merrifield against Gibson. Moustakas, probably in that same realm for you, I'd assume, as Travis Shaw against Castillo. Dozier, Hernan Perez is against Castillo as well. That Milwaukee-Cincinnati game, depending on where he is, if he is in the lineup. Second base is a little bit dicey here. What do you got?
Yeah, I don't disagree, which is why, I may look to Peraza or Whit Merrifield, just, for one of them, because they're cheap. Peraza is very cheap. And I think he's on a team that should score a decent amount of runs, right? And then Merrifield because he's good and he's leading off. And as you mentioned, Gibson has actually been better against lefties. Again, Merrifield is very good. I do want to look something up. It's easy to remember, or it's easy to the one thing I forget, Dan. The splits, the platoon, how they do with that, what pitches they have, all that good stuff. That stays locked away throughout the winter, and then I just unlock the door, unlock the mental door, and it's there. But one thing it's easy for me to forget is which pitchers, especially guys that haven't been in the league for too long, are good or not great at holding runners.
Yep.
Some of them you just know, right?
Yep.
Like Ubaldo Jimenez, Ubaldo Jimenez, terrible.
Any Mets pitcher.
Syndergaard, the worst. Yeah, Matt's bad. So on. But Kyle Gibson last year allowed 3 stolen bases. The year before that, in 29 starts, Dan, he allowed 1 stolen base. So this is something I would keep very much in mind when you're looking at guys like Merrifield and Mondesi, because a lot of their value does come on the base paths. I'm not saying that they won't still run, but boy, that is worth considering. And as we know, the pitcher has more to do with stolen bases than the catcher does.
Right.
Whit Merrifield had 45 stolen bases last year. Mondesi had 32 and far less plate appearances. That's something I will keep very much in mind going into this slate. I want upside on the base paths. Mike Moustakas is eligible at second base. I do like that. You're right. It definitely thins out. I think at this point it becomes a question of where are they hitting? Where in the order are they? César Hernández is worth looking at as a stack option, but I would assume that he hits 8th. I'm pretty sure Franco batted. Did Franco bat 8th again today? You know what? He may have. I think he did. Let me just check.
Yeah, he was 8th. Hernández was 7th.
Yeah, pretty incredible though. You walked the 8th hitter intentionally twice. He walked 3 times.
Got to get to that pitcher, man.
Yep, right, of course, but still, I mean, it's pretty wild. And the second time they intentionally walked him, a pinch hitter was coming up. So it was on, but 2 for 2, 3 walks, 2 of them intentional, 1 RBI, and a home run against Max Scherzer. So Franco is totally locked in right now. He's already at 3 home runs on the season. He already has 8 RBIs. He looks phenomenal. Maybe they keep hitting him 8th. Why not?
Yep.
So if Caesar's batting 7th, I don't think it's crazy. But this is more so a product of the position not offering all that much. I'll ask you this before we go on. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Scope here? Probably going to bat 7th for Minnesota against Homer Bailey. Right now, the Minnesota Twins have an implied run total of 4.7. It is the highest on the slate.
Yeah, and I think Scope's fine. He's not somebody that I would find my way. It's not somebody that jumped off the page as my first option here. I do like I like going to Moustakas here, 4,600. If I can get there, Scope
like
just $600 less. If I'm going cheaper, I think I think I go Hernandez, go $100 cheaper, and I do. There are probably one-offs in here that I might be ignoring. Brandon Lowe against Marquez could be somebody I can convince myself of as a one-off, depending on where he is in the lineup for the Tampa Bay Rays. But Scope's fine for me. Not somebody that I think I'm overly excited to roster, though.
All right.
Let's do third base next. We're clearly at the top. You have Jose Ramirez, and he's sort of a lone wolf right now for the Indians. Is facing Carlos Rodon. We talked splits a ton last year when it came to Ramirez. He has struggled a bit out of the gate. Not surprising. It's just been who else are you going to pitch to or not pitch to on this lineup?
Right, that's true.
It's and I know that's a little bit anecdotal and lots of stats point to that not being necessarily fully true. But if you're a pitcher facing this, and if you're Carlos Rodon, you don't let Jose Ramirez beat you. Like that's what it comes down to. And I think you'll see a lot of that until Lindor comes back or until his team spirals and they start trading up other assets. You have Travis Shaw eligible
also
here.
Interesting too that it's very early, but he is striking out a little more and he's walking less. But again, very, very early. I mean, minuscule sample. I not something I'd look into. But yeah, when you don't have those bats, E5 and Lindor around you, because he was batting. It was Lindor, Brantley, Ramirez, Encarnacion, right?
Yep.
That's a pretty nice spot to be in.
Yep, absolutely. I think here at third base, you're talking him at the top. You have Arenado at 47. You have Shaw at 43. Rendon against Nola isn't all that appealing. I guess you start getting cheaper to guys like a Derek Dietrich against Peralta. Or even going way cheaper. Yandy Díaz will be out for Wednesday's game. I guess you could see Arroyo there against Marquez. Again, not the most appealing matchup, but a cheaper price point. What do you like at third base?
So we talked about Moose, right? And Travis Shaw.
Yep.
You get these guys here. You're in pretty good shape. I mentioned Peralta is definitely better against righties and by a pretty considerable margin. Again, my take on that, Dan, and I could totally be wrong, but I think it has a lot to do with being able to hide the ball better against same-handed pitchers.
That makes sense.
When you're a lefty going up against him, you would think you'd have a better line of vision to the ball coming out of his hand. Maybe I'm wrong, but his first start, he got beat up pretty bad, right? He went, I think 3 innings, gave up 4 runs, a home run. He walked 3. He just did not have it. So Eugenio Suarez is definitely worth targeting here. But I had mentioned one guy just a minute ago. What do we do? And I am curious to get your take here as well. What do we do? And by the way, Suarez, I believe he homered today, which would be nice, get him out of that very early season funk, because he had been looking pretty rough. Yeah, he homered today, went 3 for 2 with 2 RBIs and a homer and a double. That's good to see. You know why? Because he's really good, and a little slow start isn't going to affect much. But what do you do with Maikel Franco? I mean, generally we aren't huge on guys that cost this much and bat 8th. You mostly see that for like the Yankees and teams that are just loaded from top to bottom. But I mean, he is so, I hate to use the term too, dialed in, but we know that the one thing about Franco is I don't think it's totally a fluke, because we know that the power's always been there. And another thing, we know that he's never been a high strikeout guy.
Right?
I mean, ever since coming to Philly, I won't include his 2014 season where he hardly saw, he did. No, let's see. No, 58 plate appearances. So we won't include that, because what are you, still a rookie until I think 150? If you have under 150, until you whatever.
Plate appearances, yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. he has had a K rate from 2015 on of 15, 16, 15, 13, and 16 this year. Very, very low, meaning he's making contact. When Maikel Franco is making good contact, 43%, he's pulling the ball, or he's going oppo 43% of the time, pulling it 43% of the time. So he's either going oppo or pulling the ball with a ton of power, massive hard contact, 43% fly ball rate as well. It's really hard not to like somebody like him, even though he's batting eighth, against a guy in Aníbal Sánchez, because when the power's there, you know what he's capable of doing. And right now he's dialed in, making great contact. And I think it really helps having so many great guys around you. He's been a 22-plus home run guy for 3 straight seasons. I think this is his first 30 home run season, and I feel pretty confident about it given the amount of protection he has not protection, but the amount of good pitches he's going to see.
It is 130 at-bats or 50 innings pitched.
130 or 50. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I knew 50 was in there.
Exactly. I think you got to 150 there.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with Maikel Franco? So I think this comes down to an ownership question for me. And so if the top end of the Phillies team is going to be the higher owned stack, I might play around with a 6, 7, 8 3-man stack and go to a different team for my top of the lineup stack. So get Franco, get Hernandez at second base, which is going to be a struggle, and Odubel or whatever. The other thing I would point out here is it is a day game after a night game. So you may get a different lineup here from Kepler, which is something to consider. Early on in the season, could get someone else leading off. You could get McCutchen with a day off. If McCutchen gets a day off and you have Caesar at the top of the lineup, whole new ball game and a whole new way of looking at the Phillies lineup. But I think that's the way I approach Franco here. I don't mind talking hot streaks. You know that from a baseball perspective, we don't know when they start. We don't know when they end. But when we're in the middle of them, I'm not afraid to say, hey, a guy's off to a good start. And I take more confidence in that. So I like Franco here at 4K. I don't think it's an over-the-top price point, even batting eighth in the lineup. You do have Dietrich. You have Hunter Dozier, who's been playing a bit for the Kansas City Royals. And then I mentioned that Yandy Díaz is going to be out. He was taken out of the game on Tuesday. Not sure exactly who will be in. I know Carlos Arroyo was recalled from AAA Durham on Monday. He bats from the right side and would have a matchup here with Charlie Morton. Not exactly all that. Against Marquez on the other side. Can't say that's overly exciting. Do you see anybody else cheap-wise at third base that you think is at least worth mentioning?
Not really. The only guy that I not in this spot, but I do like to finally have a stronger year is a guy that I've really been high on, and he's let me down. Now, fortunately, I said that about a few guys like Berrios and most specifically associated with myself, Blake Snell, and I was wrong for a few years on them. So I get it, but they finally came around. I believe that Yohan Moncada is going to come around, Dan. He's got all of the tools. He doesn't steal as much as he did when he was in the minors. Maybe it's just you put on more weight, you bulk up a bit and whatever, but he has all the tools to be really successful. Again, very small sample, but he has only struck out in he's 18 plate appearances. I don't know if we're counting the one from today or Tuesday, but 3 times in 18 plate appearances. That was his biggest problem. And it wasn't that he would chase. It's just he had horrible bat control. So he'd actually be swinging over pitches in the zone. You would think that's a very fixable aspect of his game. And if he fixes that, the power is very much going to come. So yeah, against Kluber, it's tough. In tournaments, I actually do have some interest because he's cheap. But again, it's Corey Kluber.
That makes sense. Let's talk shortstops, then outfield, and we'll be done with the pod. Shortstop, you have Adalberto Mondesi here. He of the, I'm going to put in air quotes, quote unquote, inside the park home run. There was a misplay in the outfield by the center fielder. Then the relay throw was missed by both the second baseman and the shortstop. No errors on the play. Oh, they called it an inside the park home run. But not exactly. And he loafed it out of the box. The guy's fast as hell, so don't get me wrong. But he did not take off as if he thought he was going to have a chance at a double or triple. He thought, I think, he hit a home run from the way he watched the ball. But Mondesi's here at the top of 5,100. Trevor Story against Morton at 45. Trea Turner's out. He has a broken finger. Trea Turner's going to be out for a while here for the Washington Nationals, so we'll see who they slot into the lineup as their shortstop. We mentioned Gene Segura before. I think he's absolutely fine here. And then you get into, again, question marks, the Hernan Perez's of the world, depending on where he is. If he is in the lineup for the Milwaukee Brewers, he batted 7th this past Sunday and played shortstop for Milwaukee. You do have Arcia as another shortstop there for Milwaukee as well. Bats from the right side. He's 3,600. What are some of your favorite names here?
Segura. I'll continue with these Phillies righties. 4,200 seems really, really friendly. A very low strikeout guy and batting second, presumably batting second where he's been hitting all season long. Yeah, I like that. By the way, Trea Turner, I don't know if you saw it, but he went in for a bunt, right?
Yep.
So he shows bunt, and it looked like he was protecting his fingers, but it got like right here. Okay. And listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional, Dan, but if that didn't break his finger.
It's already meant it. Yeah. Dave Roberts said
it's confirmed.
Broken. Yeah. It's broken.
Dave Roberts, huh?
Not Dave, David Martinez. Sorry.
I'm gonna say, that is some inside information. Because I remember people, when I tweeted it, people had tweeted back at me saying, I'm pretty sure he lipped, like I could read his lips saying, I think it's broken.
Yep.
By the way, that wasn't the fault of Eflin. I mean, that's
no.
really bad luck. Someone said, Bryce is going to get plunked. You know that. Well, I don't know why. It wasn't. It's really nobody's fault. He just misplaced the bunt.
Yep.
You know?
He has, to quote directly here, Trea Turner has a non-displaced broken right index finger. No timetable for his return, but David Martinez was pretty sullen talking about the injury.
I mean, you got to think if you're talking a football player where you can put some type of club on or whatever, right? Not a receiver, of course, but a lot of other positions, or basketball player, if it's your offhand, I mean, that's still, you couldn't really do that. I get it. But when it comes to baseball, how long do you think? A month?
I'd say 4 to 6 weeks is probably likely.
Right? Yeah. That's rough, man. That's really rough. And the reason I brought that up is because Aaron Nola is very good, but he's also not exactly great at holding runners. He allowed 17 last year, 21 the year before, but with Realmuto behind the maybe, you know what, Dan, I'm glad you brought up the day night thing, because if there's one thing we know, even though Realmuto is a damn workhorse, it would make sense that he gets the day off.
Yep.
I'd be shocked if he didn't. So Realmuto probably gets the day off here, and to your point further, which would mean that whoever's filling in for him probably bats 8th and moves Franco up, which means that I would be even more interested in it. Who is their backup now?
Knapp, isn't it?
Is it though? I thought it might be. Yeah, it's got it. Knapp's got to be the backup. Yeah. But I'm not saying
unless Kingery plays catcher as well, which is possible.
Right. I don't even think he's with the team right now, is he? Yeah, he is. He is.
He's somebody that could see time here too. Like again, Kapler being the stat guy he is, and that's somebody who could be in there.
Right. But the thing about Knapp, if Realmuto's out, is he's got to bat 8th. Like he's got to. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if he hit 9th and Nola hit 8th. But fact of the matter is, I'd be surprised if Franco is any lower than 7th. And yeah, it's only one spot in the order, but it still makes him a little more appealing. And then you don't have to worry as much about the intentional walks either to get to the pitcher, as we saw against the Nationals on Tuesday. But anyway, I talked about Peraza a bit at second base. Jorge Polanco's my guess, Dan, is that he's probably going to be chalk, along with I think Segura would be too, but maybe not with that total. It's shocking to me. The two guys that stand out the most for me, though, and then we can move on, are definitely Jorge Polanco, assuming he's batting second here against Homer Bailey, and Gene Segura. You can throw Peraza into the mix as well. And if you wanted to, Mondesi. I think Mondesi's a bit pricey in this spot, especially how difficult it's been to steal on Kyle Gibson.
I am intrigued by who fills in for Trea Turner. I assume it's going to be Wilmer Difo. Not that Wilmer Difo is
Would
anything
definitely think so.
to write, but he's still 3,500. If Difo was like 2,800, then I could see throwing a hope for a single here or hope for a single and a run scored against Nola in some way, shape, or form. But 3,500 still expensive enough. I'll probably stay away. I think Segura is the guy I'm leaning on. Again,
Yeah,
I think we're going to see a funky lineup from the Phillies. That's just my guess here. But I would agree. I would agree.
I don't think this early in the year, Gabe's just going to go full out like bench unit. I don't think that's the case.
So let's go next. Outfield, we'll close it out here. Obviously, lots of options across multiple positions. It's going to be Christian Yelich, Bryce Harper, Nelson Cruz is going to be a big option here. The entire Minnesota Twins outfield, Rosario and Kepler would be big on my radar. You talk about the Milwaukee Brewers outfield with Yelich and Braun clearly as options. Who are some of your favorites?
All right. Well, I have quite a bit here, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. You said McCutchen could definitely sit. I wouldn't be surprised. But dude, if he keeps leading off,
Absolutely.
How does McCutchen not come into play as one of the guys that stands out to you? Once again, not that expensive. You're not looking at ridiculous price points on any of these guys whatsoever, and that's exactly the reason why. Oh wow, Kevin Durant ejected again. He's been that's interesting, man. In a pretty important game
Been
too.
Feisty.
Yeah, right? Seriously. So McCutchen, and then I get it, Bryce, it's lefty righty and Sanchez has been worse against righties, but I don't think anybody cares about that. Would I be wrong to say that Bryce, if you're stacking the Phillies, is probably in play?
I would hope.
You would think so, right? Does Jesse Winker lead off? I don't think so. It should be Schebler, right? I mean, they didn't have a day-night game. No, they don't. They played earlier. All right, no, they did play at what, 6 o'clock?
They played at 6:40, and Winker led off against Chacin, right?
Yeah, true. So I would think either way, Schebler or Winker, they're both really cheap, and they're both facing Peralta. We've talked about the whole issue that with lefties at Great American. I really like that. Christian Yelich, if you can pay for him, is one of my favorite plays on this slate, Dan. I really like Christian Yelich against Luis Castillo. Goes from a great park in Milwaukee to a great park in Cincinnati. He's been spectacular. He's picked up right where he left off last season. Love him. Eddie Rosario's another one. Max Kepler's been getting some leadoff work. He's facing Homer Bailey. I think did you mention the whole Kansas City outfield, or did you mention another outfield?
No, I said between the Brewers and the Minnesota Twins. So
okay, yeah, both of them. But I think also I'm sorry, that's what I meant. I meant against Kansas City and Homer Bailey. Yes, the Minnesota Twins, exactly. So those are a bunch of options that we have here, and I think the outfield, I don't want to say it'll be concentrated for me between just a handful of guys, but if it was, I'd be okay with it.
Currently, your third best hitter in third best hitter in the American League, and the tied for fifth overall is Jorge Soler, Kansas City Royals outfielder at 455 on the year.
Great this year, man.
Yep, has a cannon too. He's a guy that the Cubs really thought was going to be part of their future, and then didn't pan out, got traded, and now may get some run here with Kansas City as they try to figure out exactly who they are. Lots of content will be available over at Awesemo.com. You get the write-up of the later slate. You get the MLB strategy show. You get the projections. You get Alex's grades and more. You find the deep dive for the night slate at 5 p.m. There is NBA content still ongoing as well. You get some core stacks from Adam. You also get Eddie doing live before lock on some outlets. I know it was whether Periscope or YouTube or a variety of other ways, but we'll have content. Check on in over at Awesemo.com, also on our YouTube channel for all of that. If you want to become a member, Awesemo.com, use the promo code EARLYBIRD. Gets you 50% off your first month. Find Dave on Twitter at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Feel free to find me as well. That's at Dan Stratford. And you find EMAC, you find Adam tomorrow morning on Thursday. Getting you ready for the Thursday slate of MLB games right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.